Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Daniel Rogers, and today I'll be standing in for Dr. Don K. Preston as he and his wife Jan just enjoy some time off to celebrate their anniversary. Today, we're going to continue our discussion on Revelation. The video that was posted yesterday, I made two mistakes. That's right, I'm not perfect. Mistake number one, when I was going through the chiastic structure of chapters 2 and 3 and the seven churches, I mistakenly called them the seven chapters instead of the seven churches. That was my third recording for the day, and so I got things a little bit backwards. Okay, the second thing is the seven trumpets of Revelation end in chapters 10 and 11. The seventh trumpet is blown in chapters 10 and 11. When I said the 10th trumpet, I meant to say the 10th chapter. So, two errors, done with, out of the way. So the chiastic center of the seven churches of Asia is Thyatira, they're in chapter 4, or rather in chapter 2. It's the fourth church. See, I did it again. Okay. Don't forget PPW coming up July 11th through the 13th. Be sure to check out the websites, BibleProphecy.com, eschatology.org, and DonKPreston.com. All right? Today, we're going to be traveling to Ephesus. Ephesus, if you don't count the book of Revelation, has 6 books that are authored to it. 1, Ephesians. 2, Colossians. 3 and 4, 1st and 2nd Timothy. 5 and 6, 1st and 2nd Peter. If you go and you look at the introductions of those books and the information in those books, you'll see that those epistles were ultimately meant for Ephesus as well. You may be able to argue some others, but those will do for now. In Revelation chapter 2, we read of the church of Ephesus, and there's a couple of things there that are odd. One, he mentions that they were not able to tolerate these false so-called apostles that were troubling the people. Revelation 2, verse 2. Another thing is, they were not able to endure this doctrine, and they hated the deeds of the Nicolaitans or the Nicolaitans, whatever you want to say, from Revelation chapter 2 and verse 6. I just want to point out that not only are the 2 and the 2nd and 3rd chapter of Revelation chiastically structured, with Thyatira being the center of that structure, but each of the individual letters are chiastically structured as well. And so what you have is the false apostles of Revelation 2:2 being the Nicolaitans of Revelation 2:6. That's how the epistle is structured in sort of a mirrored fashion where it folds in on itself. But who are these Nicolaitans? Who are these pseudo-apostles? Well, we have several good hints given to us in Scripture. These fake apostles appeared as early as 2 Thessalonians 2, and they were teaching the church at Thessalonica that the Lord had already come there in AD 52 or so. If you go and you look at 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 and following, you will see that fake letters were being sent to the church at Thessalonica, and presumably to other churches as well, trying to convince them that the day of the Lord had already come. In some versions of the Bible, the word "at hand" is put there in 2 Thessalonians 2, but if you look at just about any other version, you'll see that translation error was corrected. All right? When we follow this train of false apostles, we see that they're of a Jewish origin. But then we come to the book of 1st and 2nd Timothy, which, remind you, were written to Ephesus. Timothy was stationed at Ephesus, and Paul was dealing with some issues that arisen there, and he was dealing with them through Timothy. When you come to 2 Timothy chapter 2 especially, we read about 2 individuals whose names were Hymenaeus and Philetus. There's another individual who's named in the first book, Alexander. If you wish to know more information about this, I'd encourage you to go look at the excursus material that I gave on Hymenaeus and Philetus and my commentary on 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. You can download that for free on eSword via my website. Okay, so these fake apostles, the Nicolaitans, were messing with the church for all these years. 2nd Thessalonians and as well with the book of 2nd Timothy. Even in Acts chapter 20, Paul warned them that the church of God that he had purchased with his own blood, over whom he had appointed these overseers as elders, were going to have to deal with some wolves in sheep's clothing among the flock. I contend that these wolves in sheep's clothing of Acts chapter 20 are the same thing as the false teachers, false apostles of 2 Thessalonians 2, same thing as the Hymenaeus and Philetus characters in 2 Timothy 2, and it's the same thing as the false apostles in Revelation 2, as well as the Nicolaitans in Revelation 2:6. Here's where it gets a little interesting. The Nicolaitans, a lot of people wonder what that is. In the etymology of the word literally means to conquer the people. That's what the word is. That's what the root word means, to conquer the people. Guess what? There's an Old Testament character whose name means the same thing, and his name was Balaam. When you look here at Revelation chapter 2, you'll actually find talk in this chapter about the doctrine of Balaam. And so the Balaam doctrine that you read about in Revelation chapter 2 and verse 14 is the same thing as the Nicolaitan doctrine. They both mean the same thing, one in Hebrew, one in Greek, to conquer the people. When you read 2 Timothy chapter 2, and you read about Hymenaeus and Philetus, Paul takes a quotation there from the book of Numbers, and you'll have to go look at some of Don's videos to get this further information. But Paul takes a quotation from the book of Numbers talking about the sons of Korah who were attempting, in a sense, to conquer the people, to take the people for themselves, to remove the leadership from Moses and put it on themselves. And Paul takes that quotation from there to show Paul, to show Timothy, to show Ephesus that the foundation of God would stand sure, that the people would remain the people, that everything was in place as God meant it to be, and no one like Hymenaeus or Philetus or Alexander could do anything to stop that. So what you have is a connection from Ephesians 2 from Revelation 2 to the book of 2 Timothy chapter 2, to Acts chapter 20, to 2 Thessalonians 2. This is the same band of false teachers, and they're called the Nicolaitans, those who would conquer the people like Balaam. Here's something cool though. Go back to 2 Peter chapter 2, and Peter warns this. In 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 1, he says, "But false prophets also arose among the people, like Balaam, just as there will also be false teachers among you, who will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the master who bought them." By the way, the master who bought them, there is a thematic connection there to Acts chapter 20, the church that was purchased with his blood. All right? Denying the master who bought them, bringing swift destruction upon themselves. In other words, when the false teachers appear, the destruction is going to be swift. Okay? If you read along, he says in verse 3, "In their greed they will exploit you with false words. Their judgment from long ago is not idle, and their destruction is not asleep." In other words, when they appear, they're going to be destroyed quickly. These false teachers are also called Balaam, if you read down here in 2 Peter chapter 2. They're those who follow after the teachings of Balaam. Now, in 2 Peter chapter 3, I'm kind of like throwing a lot of information at you, but that's okay. In 2 Peter 3, this group is called the scoffers. And he says, in the last days, scoffers will come. Okay, get this. This is neat. All right. In Jude says that the scoffers that were prophesied about by the apostles to appear in the last days had arrived. It's right there at the end of Jude. What does that mean? That means that the destruction of those scoffers was not idle, that their judgment was near, that their being done away with was soon. In other words, judgment was about to take place when those scoffers arise, and they arise in Jude. Okay, let's go back to Revelation now with this information in mind. I know that's a lot, but let's go back. So Revelation 2, he says, you've dealt with these people, you've overcome them, you've rejected them, good job. But that's another time indicator that the judgment was going to happen quickly, that the judgment discussed in Revelation of these false teachers would happen shortly. That's neat, is it not? All right. That was not what I planned on talking about, but it works. What we'll do tomorrow then is get into the discussion of the blessing associated with the church at Ephesus, and I will go over that with you about the tree of life that's in the midst of the paradise of God. Thank you so much for joining me in the class today. Hope you appreciate it. Hope you can follow it. I know I was a little quick there, But I think it'll be good information if you stop and you start and you stop and you start and you read the verses that I cited and take some time to do a little bit of digging yourself. Good luck to you today. Hope God blesses you in all that you do, and I will see you again tomorrow.